Yo. So when you're playing passive and going for placement points, it's most common to end up dying during your rotation. Whether it's getting jumped in the early game or getting shot from an angle you weren't prepared for in the end game, your ability to rotate effectively at the right time is what's going to keep you alive. Hey guys, once again, this is Keith Allen. I just want to say, for those of you who have connected with me on my Instagram, it has been awesome. Welcome to another video, this time on how to rotate in arena matches. Yes, I'm excited about this. Learning theory and strategies behind rotating in Fortnite can be complicated at times. Who agrees with me on that one? Yes. Luckily, there are coaches that can lend a guiding hand. During the early and mid games, you want to avoid being caught out during your rotations. So many games end in disaster because players run into each other during their journey to the safe zone. They decide to fight, but the fight takes too long. Then the storm arrives, putting added pressure on the players. So it's good to reduce the risk of dying during the early game and mid game by getting a head start on your rotation. It's especially useful if the circle is really far, like on the other side of the map. You need to cover a lot of distance to escape the storm, and you don't really have the time to fight players. Typically, as long as you're set up in the next safe zone, you'll stay alive for the moment. The added benefit of being set up in the safe zone is that you get to look for kills on other players rotating in. As far as where to set up, generally the best spot is usually some sort of natural high ground you can build a base on. And unless the zone is packed with players, it's usually better to try to set up in a spot that's more likely to be zone favored, like in the center of the circle. By minimizing the distance you have to rotate throughout the game, you can also reduce your chances of getting caught out of position. So, if you're looking to avoid players, the path you take on your rotation also matters. You need to consider how many players are going to be rotating into a safe zone from each direction. For example, check it out. If the third circle ends up being Fatal Fields, where are players going to be rotating in from? Well, for one thing, there are way more zones to the north of Fatal than to the south. Only a few players located on the outskirts near Lucky Landing would be coming in from that direction. So if you're in the snow biome and you need to make your way to Fatal, it'd be safer to approach from the south side than from the north. There are also other factors that'll have an effect on how many players rotate. For instance, the bus path. But the main thing is to keep in mind is the direction most players should be coming in from. For end games, especially the moving zones, it can often be a good idea to create some room for yourself and rotate ahead of the storm. To be honest, it could just buy you time and provide safety as you're usually entering in an area which is covered by the storm. We see pros doing this a whole lot. They'll sometimes need to pop some heals, but they choose to instead go for the better position before basing up. It may not seem like much, but having a safe angle to shoot from can often be the most important thing in the end game. Hey guys, so for Season 9, we've got 3 vehicles usable in-game. The Baller, the Quad Crasher, and the Driftboard. We've talked about the Baller extensively in the past, and while its usage is definitely lowered after the health nerfs, Ballers are still one of the, if not the best, ways to get around. If you haven't already, hey, check out our Baller guide on this channel to get some more specifics on how to use the Baller. So, what about the other 2 vehicles? That's a good question, guys. Well, we're sure many of you have seen pros using these vehicles to cover really long distances. Of course, the downsides are that there's no cover provided with these 2 vehicles, unlike the Baller. So, they're generally riskier to use. However, when used correctly, that's a whole nother story. These babies can be lifesavers when you have a bad zone. So when you use a quad crasher on the ground, you're moving pretty slow compared to the other vehicles. I'm sure you know that. Sitting stationary in the driver's seat in combination with slow ground movement makes you super vulnerable to gunfire. Luckily, it's possible to fly with one, meaning, you can cover insane distances with much more protection from other players. Flying with the quad allows you extra looting and farming time at any point of the game. But, it's most useful for early game rotations. It's really unlikely your quad will be shot out of the air, so it's actually not a bad rotation method. Being able to fly around on the quad has been known for quite a while, but for some reason, there's just still not a lot of players that can do it. Can you do it? Alright, so we're not going to go into too much detail here, but here is the simple explanation for flying with the quad. You guys ready? So first, drive off a steep incline, like a ramp. Now, as you drive off of it, tap the boost button and hold reverse to angle the nose of the quad up a bit. Now, during the short boost, you angle the nose of the quad up, slightly past a 90-degree angle. Then as the boost ends, hold forward to reset back to the angle you went off at the ramp. If you rinse and repeat this technique properly, guys, you're going to keep gaining height and covering distance. If you don't know this trick, it's definitely worth a little bit of time and creative to learn, so be patient, you can do it. So the Driftboard is much simpler to use. That's the good news. All you need to do is jump, then press the boost button while angling backward just like the quad. However, you can't fly forever with it like you can with the quad. You'll eventually touch the ground and you're going to need to go for another jump. The main thing you want to try and maintain is the speed on this thing. Any period where you're slowing down by bumping into things or messing up jumps gives any nearby opponents the opportunity to land some shots. It can be tricky to use at first, but if you don't have access to a ball or a quad crasher, a Driftboard might save your life one game. It has definitely saved mine. So ever since Season 4, Epic has been adding items or devices to the map that helps us rotate. Like in Season 9, we have the Slipstream and the Sky platforms. Leftover from previous seasons, there are still the natural rift spawns, ziplines, and volcano vents as well. So all these methods, minus the ziplines, are still insane for rotations. They let you pretty much reach anywhere on the map in a pretty short amount of time at next to no cost. Hey, they're so good in fact that, you'll often find players setting up a base next to one. That way, when the next circle pops up, they have their travel already planned. There's always the risk you get shot at while using them though, so just try your best to maintain some unpredictable movement while in them to throw off your opponent's aim. You guys got it? Cool. For some of those more intense arena matches, it is also super important to be carrying at least some mobility. Most players dedicate a slot or two in their loadout for one of these items. You normally want to use them during the mid to late game, when you need to make long rotations that would otherwise use too much material. Also, you can and should be using them to nab high ground. As we're sure you all know this, it's the most advantageous position to normally hold during the end game, and it's normally where we see the winner of the match. So just like with material, mobility items are a resource. You don't just have an endless supply of shadow bombs every game. Most of the time, guys, you need to make sure you use each one to its fullest extent to get the most value out of it. For instance, you should be thinking, can I save this launch pad for potentially more dangerous zone later in the game? Or the zone is close, maybe I should just build there. This is part of what pro players are good at, managing their items. There's a fine line, guys, between knowing when to save an item and not using it optimally. Mastering this, guys, is what makes some players so good at competitive in-games. It's also what aspiring competitive players tend to struggle with. They hold on to an item for so long, they just end up dying in a situation where they should have just used it. I'm not gonna lie, I've been there many times. It is so frustrating. I hope you feel my pain when you get the best stuff and you don't even get to use it. Who's been there? Who's been through that? It's a good idea that if you feel unsure about whether you should use an item or just build there, you should probably just use the item. As you become more experienced with competitive in-games, guys, this decision making will just be natural. So guys, we're in the last month of Season 9 now, and the mobility item meta is as follows. Shadow bombs are extremely good, okay? And probably the best to carry if you can find them. You're very maneuverable while using them, obviously, relatively safe from harm, and are able to traverse long distances, which is great. With the double jump and wall climb ability, hey, it can end up being a cinch nabbing high ground from unsuspecting players. It's a risky move at times, all right? We all know that. And it requires a lot of confidence to pull off. But of course, the reward of having high ground can definitely be worth it. So if you're able to climb up to where they're positioned right as the shadow effect is about to wear off, then you can play aggressively or build over top of them to take high ground. Shockwave grenades were added back to the item pool recently, yay, replacing impulse grenades. While looking smashed through build, you still want to make sure you have a clear path to your target destination. One should be enough to get you across most zones. If it doesn't get you there all the way, hey, it could be a good idea to build the rest of the way. Even for taking high ground, hey, you can still launch yourself up and try to attach until whatever build you can at the top. It can be difficult to pull off, but it's definitely doable. Hey guys, check out this recent clip posted on Reddit by Speedy Gonzalez. It shows a setup for shockwave grenades to launch your entire squad over 50 meters with a single grenade. Think about this, guys. This can triple or quadruple the efficiency of those items. For the upcoming trios competitions, it should be interesting to see if any teams use this or a similar setup. Glider redeploy is arguably the worst mobility item in the game right now. The problem is, you can't travel very far with it in any decently stacked in-game lobby. If you glide long distances with it, your movement becomes slow and predictable, which can lead you to getting beamed out of the sky. And that's definitely happened to me, and it's not a good feeling. I'm sure it's happened to you too. But even with this downside, it can still be worth carrying. Some players like holding it as insurance when holding high ground, so they can prevent fall damage. I get it. You just need to make sure you don't glide for too long with it. Instead, you just need some time to pull out of it, so you're only gliding for a second or two. Then it could be an item worth holding on to. Launch pads are insanely valuable since they don't take up an item slot to carry. The distance you can travel is the highest of all the mobility items in the game right now. Unfortunately, hey, they are kind of rare. As you can't find them every game, it's a good idea to use the ones placed by your enemies. Even if you take a bit of storm damage, it's usually entirely worth it to hop into a launch pad just placed by someone else. Overall, guys, hey, you're gonna probably get the most value out of these items when you can rotate and take a better position with them, like the high ground. But even if you can't, hey, they provide an insane value during the late game, which is why they're basically necessary to carry in competitive matches. Throughout the game's history, Epic has been increasing the amount of mobility available to us through new items, map changes, and vehicles. However, even with all of these methods, you're going to need to build to rotate safely at some point. There's a bunch of techniques that take some learning to rotate effectively. And if you're interested in learning these specifics, hey, the courses over at ProGuides have got you covered. So since your material amount is limited, you need to manage it well, just like with items. Your traditional tunnel method has you building a tunnel with walls and floors either forward or diagonally. This can take quite a bit of mats when compared to, say, tarping high ground. You know, with the traditional high ground position, guys, you usually just need to put a couple of floor and cone pieces to cover yourself as you rotate, since nobody has an angle on you from any other direction. High ground is, in most scenarios, the spot to be in. I repeat, it is the spot to be in. For that reason, it does get contested quite a bit, as you already know. And although it's risky to play for it, high ground is definitely worth going for. While you're up there, hey, it's your job to be looking for eliminations with your rifle, while also making sure you stay ahead of the zone. Guys, you also need to be aware of all directions, in case somebody is trying to, if you notice somebody attempting to build up and take your high ground. Usually you want to build up yourself. If they're within range, hey, you can expand out with more floor pieces to block them off. You need to also make sure you stay within an effective range. When you're too high up, it's often a good idea to build down a bit in order to get back in a better distance for your weapons. So to save on potential mats, you can also choose to hug the storm in your rotates. If you're right on the edge of the storm, you've essentially protected yourself from that angle without having to build. It can actually save you quite a bit of mats when tunneling in. It's risky, yeah, and it also requires you to be able to maneuver against somebody trying to gatekeep you from the zone. Things like editing up or down a floor can save your life against players trying to hold you during the moving zone. Pros do this all the time when they have nowhere else to move. If an engagement is going their way, hey, they usually just edit or build downward in order to create distance, switch up position, and keep themselves safe. When you're really low or completely out of material and items, you need to start looking for limbs. In order to rotate in without spinning anything, hey, try trailing behind what your opponents build. It can be difficult staying alive this way, which is why you need to be looking for a kill. That way, hey, you can hopefully recover some material or get some mobility for the remainder of the game. Building, guys, is the bread and butter of Fortnite, and it probably won't be seeing any significant changes for a while. So guys, in summary, how you rotate is going to have a big effect on the outcome of your game. It's not even only about how you rotate, but it's also when and where you decide to move that will have an impact. You know, guys, Epic Games has honestly done a good job this season making mobility readily available, both on the map and in the item pool. It's up to you to take advantage of it so you can succeed in your games. So, what's your favorite rotation method? Let us know in the comments down below. As always, hey, if you want to find out more info on how to rotate properly, hey, be sure to check out ProGuides.com, where our arena, building, and item courses will help go over what we discussed in more detail. Guys, as always, it's been an honor. Once again, this is Keith Allen. Hey, connect with me on my Instagram. I would love to hear from you. I've been getting some awesome feedback, man, some great questions. Hey, we're doing this together, guys. We got a great community here. ProGuides, Fortnite, stay tuned for more vids coming out.